His name was David. And for a generation, his name was synonymous with God's own heart. He had slain giants, outrun kings, written songs that nations still sing 3,000 years after his death. But on one ordinary evening, one restless, sleepless night, the most celebrated king in Israel's history would make a choice that would detonate his entire dynasty from the inside. This is not a story about a king who sinned. Every king sins. This is a story about what sin does when it is given a crown, a military command, and a desperate need to survive. And somewhere in this ancient tragedy, three people are waiting for you to finally hear their side of the story. A warrior who trusted too completely. A woman who had no say in any of it. And a king who had everything, and still reached for more. He was born the youngest of 8 brothers, so insignificant in his father's eyes that when the prophet Samuel came to anoint a future king from the house of Jesse, David wasn't even called in from the fields. He was out with the sheep. An afterthought. A footnote. And yet, God saw something in that shepherd boy that no one else could. Something raw and unpolished and magnificent. And from that anonymous hillside in Bethlehem, David's ascent began, slowly at first, then with the breathtaking velocity of a stone launched from a sling. He killed Goliath when he was barely a teenager. He survived years of pursuit by a paranoid king who wanted him dead. He built alliances in the wilderness, gathered warriors around him like a constellation forms around a burning star, and eventually, inevitably, he took the throne of a unified Israel. By the time our story begins, David has been king for decades. Jerusalem is his city. He built it. He named it the City of David. He brought the Ark of the Covenant there in a procession so joyful that he danced through the streets, stripped of his royal robes, leaping and spinning in unrestrained worship while his nobles stared in scandalized silence. He was that kind of king. Passionate. Unguarded. Dangerously alive. And that same aliveness, that inability to half-feel anything, would become the weapon he could not protect himself from. It is spring. The season when kings go to war. Because this particular spring, David does not go to war. He sends his army under the command of Joab, his nephew and most trusted military commander, to lay siege to Rabbah, the fortified capital of the Ammonites. Why does David stay behind? The text does not tell us. Scholars have debated this for centuries. Some suggest he was unwell. Others argue he was simply tired, a veteran king who had earned the right to let his generals fight. Whatever the reason, David is in Jerusalem when he should be in the field. It is late afternoon. David has been unable to rest. He rises from his bed, and he walks to his rooftop. What was he thinking about? We don't know. Perhaps the war. Perhaps his sons. Perhaps God. Perhaps nothing at all. Perhaps he was simply a man seeking the relief of open air and a view of the city he had built. What he sees changes everything. From the elevated vantage of the palace rooftop, David's gaze sweeps across Jerusalem, and it catches on something. A woman. Bathing in the courtyard of her home below. The text uses 2 Hebrew words to describe what he sees. The first means beautiful. The second means very. She is extraordinarily beautiful. Now here is where most retellings rush past something critical. Bathsheba is not bathing publicly. She is in her own courtyard. She is a married woman following Jewish purification rituals. The biblical text mentions specifically that she has just completed her monthly ceremonial cleansing. She is not performing. She is not seducing. She is doing what women of her time did privately, in spaces that were meant to be private. It is the elevation of David's rooftop, the literal height of his power, that gives him sight of her. Power has always seen what it was not supposed to see. The question that damns him. What David does next is small. almost innocent seeming. He asks a question. "David, who is that woman?" 4 words. And yet everything pivots on them. Because the correct response, the response that saves his kingdom, his family, and an innocent man's life, is to not ask. To turn away. To walk back downstairs and return to his duties as king, as husband, as the man who wrote Psalm 51 about the purity of a clean heart before God. He does not turn away. His servant returns with an answer that contains its own warning, wrapped in information. Is this not Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? The servant's answer is precise. Almost deliberately precise. He identifies her by her father, Eliam, one of David's own elite soldiers. He identifies her by her husband, Uriah the Hittite, another of David's elite soldiers. These are men David knows. Men who have bled for him. Men who have built his kingdom with their bodies. The servant is not just answering a question. He is delivering a verdict. She is not available. She is not unknown. She is not a woman without a story, without a household, without a man who loves her. She is Bathsheba, wife of Uriah. And David sends for her anyway. Here is where we must stop. Fully stop. And ask the question that the biblical text, written in a patriarchal world for a patriarchal audience, does not ask. What did Bathsheba think when the king's messengers arrived at her door? What does any woman think when the most powerful man in the known world summons her to his palace while her husband is away at war? We need to resist the easy answer. We need to resist both easy answers, the one that makes her a willing seductress, and the one that collapses her into pure victimhood with no interior life at all. The truth is more complicated and more human than either. Bathsheba lives in a world where a king's summons is not an invitation. It is a command. Refusal is not a realistic option when the man summoning you controls the army, the courts, the food supply, and the definition of law itself. She arrives at the palace. As David lay with her, Bathsheba returns home. And some weeks later, she sends David a message. 2 words in the original Hebrew. Just 2. I am pregnant. 2 words. No elaboration. No accusation. No appeal. No begging. She is telling him. She is placing the weight of what has happened squarely on the desk of the man with the power to do something about it. What she does not know, cannot know, is that the thing David is about to do to solve this problem is far worse than the problem itself. While David paces his palace trying to calculate his way out of catastrophe, Uriah the Hittite is at the walls of Rabbah, doing what he has always done. His duty. Let us talk about Uriah. Because in most retellings of this story, he is a supporting character in his own tragedy. He appears, he refuses to go home, he carries his own death warrant back to the front, and he dies. And then the story moves on. But Uriah deserves more than that. His very name tells us something. Uriah. In Hebrew, it means, God is my light. He is not an Israelite by birth, he is a Hittite, which means he comes from one of the surrounding nations, a foreigner who has chosen to align himself with Israel, with David's cause, with the God of David. He is listed among David's mighty men, the Gibberim. An elite unit of 37 exceptional warriors who had stood with David from the beginning, who had fought beside him before he was king, who were so deeply woven into the fabric of David's rise that their names are recorded for eternity in the book of Samuel. Uriah the Hittite. A foreigner who was more loyal to Israel's king than that king's own heart. He is at Rabbah because that is where his king sent him. He is at Rabbah because soldiers like Uriah do not question orders. They trust the man giving them. He is about to discover what that trust costs. David's plan, when it comes to him, is elegant in its cynicism. If Uriah returns home from the battlefield and spends the night with Bathsheba, then when the child is born, everyone, including Uriah, will assume the child is his. The scandal dissolves. The pregnancy becomes a blessing. David's secret stays buried. So David sends word to Joab, "Send me Uriah the Hittite." And Joab, who asks no questions, sends him. Uriah arrives in Jerusalem dusty from the road, battle-hardened, loyal. He stands before his king and David greets him warmly, perhaps too warmly. The questions David asks are the questions of a man performing interest, not feeling it. David asked, "How is Joab? How are the soldiers? How is the war going?" He listens to Uriah's answers without truly hearing them. Because David does not care about the war right now. He cares about one thing, getting this man home to his wife. David said, "Go down to your house, Uriah. Wash your feet. Rest. You've earned it." David even sends a gift after him. A gift from the king's table. A gesture of generosity designed to lubricate the path home. What happens next stops David's plan cold. Uriah does not go home. The code of the warrior. He sleeps at the entrance to the palace, among the king's servants. When David is told this the next morning, he is stunned. And so he summons Uriah and asks, with all the delicate manipulation of a man who cannot afford to seem suspicious. David said, "Haven't you just come from a long journey? Why didn't you go home?" And Uriah's answer, Uriah's magnificent, devastating answer, falls like a judgment from heaven. Uriah answered saying, "The ark of God and Israel and Judah are staying in tents, and my commander Joab and my Lord's men are camped in the open country. How could I go to my house to eat and drink and make love to my wife? As surely as you live, I will not do such a thing." Read that again. The irony is so brutal it is almost architectural. Uriah is more faithful to David's soldiers than David is. Uriah is more committed to David's war than David is. And Uriah cannot even see the knife that is being sharpened for his back. David is not finished. He invites Uriah to stay another day. They eat together. They drink together. David ensures Uriah's cup is never empty. Perhaps tonight, loosened by wine, warmed by the king's hospitality, Uriah will finally go home. He doesn't. Again, he sleeps with the servants at the palace entrance. Again, he does not go home. There is something almost unbearable about reading these passages. This perfect, honorable man, sleeping outside his own house, 2 nights in a row, his nobility and his loyalty being weaponized against him by a king who is counting on him to be small enough to be manipulated. Uriah is not small enough. And David, finally cornered, makes the decision that separates this story from every other story of royal adultery in human history. He decides that Uriah must die. The letter is brief. It has to be. A longer letter would give him more room to second-guess himself. More words would mean more time to hear the voice that has always been his truest compass, the voice of the God who plucked him from the fields and made him king. He writes the order. He seals it. He does not trust a messenger with it. Instead, and here is where the story produces its most quietly horrifying detail, he gives the letter to Uriah to carry. Uriah the Hittite walks out of Jerusalem the next morning, heading back to the front at Rabbah, carrying a letter in his hand addressed to Joab. He does not know what it says. He does not open it. Because men like Uriah don't do that. They trust their king. Joab reads the message from his king. He has been David's military commander for years. He is not a naive man. He is not a man who is easily shocked. He has seen David make hard decisions before. He has made hard decisions himself. But this. Put Uriah out in front where the fighting is fiercest. Then withdraw from him so he will be struck down and die. Joab understands what he is being asked to do. He is being asked to assassinate one of his own men. Not in the chaos of battle where death is anonymous. Deliberately. Calculatingly. By design. He is being asked to arrange a murder and dress it up as a casualty of war. Joab does it. He places Uriah at the most exposed position in the siege, at the wall where the Ammonite defenders are strongest, where the fighting is most concentrated, where survival is least likely. He signals the retreat. The soldiers pull back. All of them. Except Uriah. Uriah turns to look behind him. The space around him is suddenly, terrifyingly empty. We do not know exactly what Uriah felt in that moment. Whether he understood. Whether he had time to understand. What we know is what kind of man he was. And the kind of man Uriah was, the man who slept outside his house for 3 nights rather than dishonor his fellow soldiers, did not run. The text simply says, the Ammonite warriors struck Uriah the Hittite, and he died. No fanfare. No final speech. No dramatic last words recorded for posterity. He fought. And then he was gone. And with him died the last best chance David had of finding his way back to the man he used to be without first descending into the full darkness of what he had become. Joab's messenger arrives in Jerusalem with news of the battle. Other soldiers died too. David's order had been poorly disguised, requiring real men to fight in a real disastrous assault so that Uriah's death would not look singular. Joab knew David might be angry about the tactical failure. He told his messenger, if the king grows angry about the casualties, tell him Uriah the Hittite is dead too. It is a small, telling detail. Even Joab, executing the murder, anticipated David's performance of outrage. He prepared for the king to pretend to be upset about poor military strategy so that Uriah's name could be slipped in at the end as the thing that made it all acceptable. David listens to the report. He hears the names of the dead. He hears Uriah's name. And he says, don't let this upset you. The sword devours one as well as another. Press the attack against the city and destroy it. Tell the general not to be distressed. These things happen. Encourage him. That is the response of David, poet, worshipper, man after God's own heart, to the murder of an innocent man who trusted him. Encourage him. In Jerusalem, Bathsheba receives news of her husband's death. She mourns. The text is clear about this, she mourned for Uriah. However complicated her feelings, however impossible her situation, she grieved. The man she had been married to, perhaps a man she genuinely loved, was gone. David waits for the mourning period to end. When it does, he brings Bathsheba to the palace and marries her. It is tidy. Clinical. The sequence of events makes a kind of grotesque sense: desire, adultery, pregnancy, murder, marriage. Every piece fits. The cover is complete. Except for one thing. The thing David has forgotten, the thing every man who has ever tried to bury a sin has forgotten, is that the ground has eyes. Nathan arrives. He is the court prophet, not a thundering outsider, not a wild-eyed wilderness hermit, but a man who has had David's ear for years. A man who has spoken God's words to David in moments of promise and possibility. He is known in the palace. He is trusted. He asks for an audience. He is granted one. And then Nathan does something remarkable. Something that reveals the depth of his wisdom and the precision of his surgical intent. He tells David a story. The parable. Nathan speaks quietly. No drama in his delivery. Just the steady voice of a man who knows exactly what he is doing. Nathan said, there were 2 men in a certain town, one rich and one poor. The rich man had a very large number of sheep and cattle. The poor man had nothing except one little ewe lamb he had bought. He raised it, and it grew up with him and his children. It shared his food, drank from his cup, and even slept in his arms. It was like a daughter to him. Now a traveler came to the rich man, but the rich man refrained from taking one of his own sheep or cattle to prepare a meal for the traveler who had come to him. Instead, he took the ewe lamb that belonged to the poor man and prepared it for the one who had come to him. David listens. And David, the poet, the warrior, the man who has always felt things with volcanic intensity, is furious. David answered, as surely as the Lord lives, the man who did this must die. He must pay for that lamb 4 times over, because he did such a thing and had no pity. And Nathan looks at David. And Nathan says, "You are the man." Long pause. The camera holds on David's face. 3 words. You are the man. The man without pity who took what was not his. The rich man who had everything and reached for the one small precious thing that belonged to someone else. The traveler who devoured someone else's treasure with no thought for the cost. David had rendered judgment on himself without knowing it. This is Nathan's genius. He did not accuse David. He got David to accuse himself. He laid a trap made entirely of David's own conscience, led him into it with a story, and then closed it around him with 4 syllables. You are the man. Nathan does not stop at the reveal. He delivers the full weight of what is coming. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says, I anointed you king over Israel, and I delivered you from the hand of Saul. I gave your master's house to you, and your master's wives into your arms. I gave you all Israel and Judah. And if all this had been too little, I would have given you even more. Why did you despise the word of the Lord by doing what is evil in his eyes? You struck down Uriah the Hittite with the sword and took his wife to be your own. You killed him with the sword of the Ammonites. The charge is not simply that David broke the law. The charge is that David despised grace. That in the midst of an ocean of given blessing, he looked at the one small thing that was not his and took it anyway. The verdict follows. Now, therefore, the sword will never depart from your house, because you despised me and took the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your own. And then, most personally of all, Nathan said, the son born to you will die. This is where most stories would end. Crime. Revelation. Punishment. Credits. But this story is not finished. Because what happens next is not merely punishment, it is transformation. And the transformation is more agonizing than anything that came before. Bathsheba's child becomes ill. And David, this man who has sinned with such cold calculation, who has committed adultery and arranged murder and spoken comfortable platitudes over the body of the man he had killed, falls apart. He fasts. He lies on the ground. He will not get up. He will not eat. His servants gather around him, alarmed, urging him to rise, to eat, to care for himself. He refuses. For 7 days, the king of Israel lies on the ground in sackcloth and weeps. He is not performing grief. He is not managing optics. He is experiencing the full collapse of a man who has finally understood the weight of what he has done, not in the abstract, not as a legal category, but in its human, breathing, innocent reality. A child, an innocent child, caught in the blast radius of a father's sin. David said, I have sinned against the Lord. That confession, when Nathan first presents the judgment, is the most honest thing David has said in months. Perhaps in years. It is also the turning point. Nathan replies, the Lord has taken away your sin. You are not going to die. The forgiveness is immediate. The consequences are not. Because God is not a transaction. Forgiveness is not the erasure of consequence. The child still dies. The sword still enters David's house. The chain of suffering that David set in motion continues to move through his family for the rest of his reign, touching every one of his sons, reshaping the entire trajectory of Israel's history. Sin is not a mistake that can be corrected. Sin is a stone dropped in water. The correction changes the color of the stone. The ripples keep moving. On the 7th day, the child dies. David's servants are afraid to tell him. This man who has been prostrate with grief for a week, what will he do when the news arrives? What David does astonishes them. He gets up. He washes his face. He puts on clean clothes. He goes to the house of God and worships. Then he comes home, asks for food, and eats. His servants are baffled. They ask, Why are you doing this? While the child was alive, you fasted and wept, but now that the child is dead, you get up and eat. David's answer is among the most quietly profound things recorded in the entire Hebrew Bible. While the child was still alive, I fasted and wept. I thought, who knows? The Lord may be gracious to me and let the child live. But now that he is dead, why should I go on fasting? Can I bring him back again? I will go to him, but he will not return to me. There is a theology in those words that is not about guilt or punishment or performance. It is about the acceptance of reality. The child is gone. Grief's work is complete. What remains is life, imperfect, painful, continuing life, and David chooses to return to it. He goes to Bathsheba. He comforts her. And in that act, in the first moment in this entire story where David is described as doing something for Bathsheba rather than to her, something shifts. Something very small and very human and very important. Bathsheba gives birth to a second child. A son. They name him Solomon. And this is where Bathsheba's story, the story within the story, truly begins. Because Bathsheba is not finished. She has survived. She has mourned. She has endured. And somewhere in the crucible of all she has been through, something in her has been forged. The woman who was summoned to a king's bedroom with no power to refuse becomes, in the years that follow, the most politically significant figure in the royal court. She watches. She learns. She understands the geometry of power in ways that perhaps David never fully did, because David always had power, while Bathsheba had to navigate it from the outside. As David grows old, as the question of succession becomes the consuming drama of the palace, it is Bathsheba who moves with the most decisive clarity. When David's son Adonijah attempts to seize the throne, setting himself up as king before David's death, gathering supporters, throwing a grand feast to celebrate his own coronation, it is Bathsheba who acts. She goes to the aging David. She reminds him of his oath, that Solomon would succeed him. She frames the crisis with precision and urgency. And David listens. Solomon is anointed king in his father's lifetime. Adonijah's attempted coup collapses. The throne passes to the son of Bathsheba, the woman who had no power, no choice, no voice in the story of her own life. Who had the last word after all? What do we make of all this? What do we do with a story that contains a sin so serious that its consequences echo forward for generations, and yet also contains a God who forgives with breathtaking speed, and yet also allows the consequences to remain? What do we do with a man who is, simultaneously, a worshipper and a murderer? A poet of the sacred and a practitioner of the profane? The author of Psalm 23, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want," and the author of a secret letter that read, "Put Uriah in the front and let him die." We sit with the discomfort of it. Because the discomfort is the point. David's story does not exist to make us comfortable. It exists to make us honest. About the capacity of good people to do terrible things. About the way power warps desire. About the human need to cover rather than confess. About the chain of consequence that begins with one person's unchecked impulse and ends in the grief of people who had nothing to do with that impulse. Uriah the Hittite. The man who was more loyal to the king than the king was to him. Who died not in spite of his virtue but in some terrible way because of it, because his honor made him inconvenient. His name is written in the genealogy of Jesus of Nazareth. Matthew chapter 1 lists the ancestors of Jesus, and when it gets to David, it reads, David was the father of Solomon, whose mother had been Uriah's wife. Uriah's wife. Not Bathsheba's son. Uriah's wife's son. 3,000 years of history, and the text still names the crime. Still refuses to let Uriah be entirely erased. Still insists, in its quiet, precise way, that what happened to him matters. His name means, God is my light. It still is. The story of David and Bathsheba and Uriah has been told 1,000 ways. As a romance. As a cautionary tale. as a study in the corrupting nature of power, as a theological meditation on sin and forgiveness. All of these readings are partially right. But here is the reading that this series wants to leave you with. This story is about the difference between who we are and who we are told we are. David was told, from childhood, from divine anointing, from years of miraculous survival, that he was special. Chosen. The man after God's own heart. And he was. And he was also a man who, one sleepless evening, looked across a rooftop and chose desire over duty. Chose self-preservation over justice. Chose the comfort of the cover-up over the agony of confession. He was both things. Fully, simultaneously both. And the Bible, unlike the hagiographies of other ancient civilizations, which routinely edited out the failures of their rulers, refuses to hide it. It tells you everything. The poetry and the pornography of David's soul. The glory and the grotesque. The worshipper and the murderer. Because the Bible is not trying to give you a hero. It is trying to give you the truth. And the truth is that the distance between the man who wrote, "Create in me a clean heart, O God," and the man who sealed a death warrant and handed it to his victim is not as vast as we would like to believe. It is the distance of one rooftop. One restless evening. One unanswered question. One choice to look when you should have turned away. The most dangerous thing about David's sin is not its scale. It is its smallness. It began with something so human, so ordinary, so achingly recognizable. He could not sleep. He went for a walk. He looked. And the looking became wanting. And the wanting became taking. And the taking became lying. And the lying became killing. And the killing became marriage. And the marriage became a secret that ate through the foundations of his house for the rest of his life. Every catastrophe has a first small step. Every empire that falls begins with a private compromise. Every Uriah has a king who once loved him, who chose, one evening, to love something else more. The story of David and Bathsheba and Uriah the Hittite is not ancient. It is not finished. It is happening right now. In boardrooms and bedrooms and corridors of power. In the quiet decisions of people who have everything and still reach for more. In the courage of the Nathans who walk into rooms where power sits unchallenged and say, without flinching, "You are the man." The question this story leaves you with is not, was David a good king, or was Bathsheba a victim or a schemer, or was Joab complicit or coerced? The question this story leaves you with is simpler and harder than any of those. What are you doing with what you have been given? Because you have been given things. Gifts. Abundance. Opportunity. Trust. And somewhere, in some courtyard, in some open field, there is a person whose welfare depends on whether you use what you have been given wisely. David forgot that. For one devastating season of his life, he forgot it completely. Don't forget it.